I stared at the old, dusty trunk in my attic, a sense of nostalgia washing over me. It had been 8 years since my grandson, Jack, last spoke to me. I had given him everything, a roof over his head, food on the table, and unconditional love. But one day, he just left. I tried calling, visiting, and even sending letters, but he never responded. It broke my heart into a million pieces. Years went by, and I heard rumors that Jack was struggling financially. I wanted to help, but my pride wouldn't let me reach out. Little did I know, Jack had been searching for me, but not for the reasons I thought. He had discovered my secret. I had hidden $300,000 in the attic trunk, a sum I had saved over the years for my retirement. But Jack had other plans. One day, I received a letter from Jack, demanding that I meet him at the old oak tree in the park. I was hesitant, but curiosity got the better of me. As I approached the tree, I saw Jack standing with his arms crossed. He looked different, older, and his eyes seemed to bore into my soul. "You're a liar and a thief," he spat, his voice venomous. I was taken aback, unsure of what he was talking about. "What are you talking about, Jack?" I asked, trying to keep my cool. But he just laughed, a cold, mirthless sound. "You know exactly what I'm talking about," he said, his eyes glinting with anger. "You've been hiding $300,000 from me, from our family. You're a selfish, manipulative old man." I felt a surge of anger, but I knew I had to keep calm. I took a deep breath and tried to explain, but Jack wasn't having it. "No, you're going to listen to me," he said, his voice rising. "You're going to listen to what I have to say, and you're going to do what I want." I was taken aback by his tone, but I knew I had to hear him out. "Okay, Jack," I said, trying to placate him. "I'll listen. What do you want to say?" But as I looked into his eyes, I saw something that made my blood run cold. Something that made me realize that I was in grave danger. As I looked into his eyes, I saw a calculating gaze, a gaze that sent shivers down my spine. It was a gaze that said he had been planning this moment for a long time, a gaze that said he was not going to let me off the hook that easily. "I want the money," he said, his voice low and even. "I want the $300,000 you've been hiding from me all these years." I felt a surge of anger at his audacity, but I knew I had to keep calm. I knew I had to reason with him, to make him see sense. "Jack, I don't know what you're talking about," I said, trying to sound as innocent as possible. "I don't know what money you're referring to." But Jack just laughed again, that cold, mirthless sound. "Don't lie to me," he said, his eyes glinting with anger. "I know all about the money. I know you've been hiding it from me, from our family. And I want it." I felt a sense of unease creeping over me. How did he know about the money? I had been so careful, so secretive. I had thought I had covered my tracks perfectly. "Jack, please," I said, trying to reason with him. "You don't understand. That money is for my retirement. It's for my future." But Jack just shook his head. "You're not going to need it," he said, his voice dripping with malice. "You're not going to need anything where you're going." I felt a chill run down my spine at his words. What did he mean? What was he planning? "Jack, stop this," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "This isn't like you. You're a good person, a kind person. What's gotten into you?" But Jack just smiled, a cold, calculating smile. "You don't know me," he said, his voice dripping with venom. "You don't know what I'm capable of." And with that, he turned and walked away, leaving me standing there, feeling shaken and scared. I didn't know what to do, I didn't know what to say. I just knew that I had to get out of there, I had to get away from Jack. I turned and ran, my heart pounding in my chest. I didn't stop until I was back in my house, locked safely inside. But even then, I couldn't shake the feeling of unease. I couldn't shake the feeling that Jack was going to come after me, that he was going to try and take the money from me by any means necessary. I tried to calm myself down, I tried to tell myself that I was being ridiculous. But I couldn't shake the feeling of fear. I couldn't shake the feeling that my life was in danger. As the days went by, I became more and more paranoid. I started to see Jack everywhere, I started to think that he was following me. I became convinced that he was going to try and hurt me, that he was going to try and take the money from me. I started to vary my routine, I started to take different routes to work. I started to look over my shoulder, I started to expect Jack to be lurking in every corner. But despite my best efforts, I couldn't shake the feeling of fear. I couldn't shake the feeling that Jack was going to get me, that he was going to take the money from me. And then, one day, I received a package in the mail. It was a small package, wrapped in brown paper and twine. I didn't recognize the return address, I didn't know who had sent it. I opened the package, my heart pounding in my chest. Inside, I found a small note, a note that made my blood run cold. "I know where you live," the note said. "I know where you hide your money. You can't hide from me forever." I felt a surge of fear, I felt a sense of panic. I knew that I had to do something, I knew that I had to take action. But what could I do? I was trapped in a nightmare from which I couldn't wake up. I looked around my house, I looked for any sign of Jack. But he was nowhere to be found. I was alone and scared. And then, I heard a noise. It was a faint noise, a noise that sounded like someone was scratching at the wall. I froze, I held my breath. The noise got louder, it got more insistent. I knew that I had to do something, I knew that I had to act. But what could I do? I was trapped in a living hell. And then, the lights went out. I was plunged into darkness, I was left to face my fears alone. I was surrounded by darkness, and the only sound I could hear was the scratching noise, which was getting louder and more intense. I tried to move, but my body was frozen in fear. I was paralyzed, unable to do anything but sit and wait for whatever was coming my way. The scratching noise stopped, and there was a moment of silence. I held my breath, waiting for something to happen. And then, I heard footsteps. They were light, careful footsteps, but they were definitely coming from inside my house. I felt a chill run down my spine as I realized that someone was inside with me. The footsteps got closer and closer, and I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. I was trying to prepare myself for what was about to happen, but I had no idea what to expect. The footsteps stopped right outside my room, and I could hear the sound of someone taking a deep breath. I closed my eyes, waiting for the worst. The door creaked open, and a sliver of light from the hallway illuminated the room. I opened my eyes to see a figure standing in the doorway, silhouetted by the light behind them. I couldn't make out any features, but I knew that it was Jack. He took a step forward, and I could see the outline of his face. His eyes were black as coal, and his skin was pale and gaunt. He looked like a ghost, a specter come to haunt me. "You can't hide from me," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "You can't keep the money from me." I tried to speak, but my voice was caught in my throat. I was unable to say a word, unable to move or react in any way. Jack took another step forward, his eyes fixed on me. I could see the hatred and anger in his eyes, and I knew that I was in grave danger. He reached out a hand, and I flinched, expecting him to grab me or hit me. But instead, he just touched my face. His hand was cold, and it sent a shiver down my spine. "You're a clever man," he whispered. "But you're not clever enough. And with that, he turned and walked away, leaving me sitting in the darkness, feeling shaken and scared. I didn't know what to do, I didn't know what to think. I was trapped in a living nightmare, and I didn't know how to escape. I sat there for what felt like hours, my heart pounding in my chest. I was waiting for something to happen, waiting for Jack to come back and finish what he had started. But the minutes ticked by, and nothing happened. The house was silent, and I was left to my own thoughts. I tried to think clearly, I tried to come up with a plan. But my mind was a jumble of emotions and thoughts, and I couldn't think straight. I was trapped in a cycle of fear and anxiety, and I didn't know how to break free. As the night wore on, I began to feel a sense of numbness. I was exhausted, emotionally and physically. I just wanted to sleep, to escape the horrors of the night. But I knew that I couldn't sleep, not yet. I had to stay awake, had to stay alert. I had to be ready for whatever was coming next. I sat there for what felt like hours, my eyes fixed on the door. I was waiting for Jack to come back, waiting for him to finish what he had started. But as the night wore on, I began to realize that I might not have to wait much longer. I heard a noise, a faint rustling sound. It was coming from outside my room, from the hallway. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. It was starting again, the cycle of fear and anxiety was starting again. And I was trapped in a living nightmare from which I couldn't escape. I sat there, my eyes fixed on the door, as the rustling sound got louder and closer. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, and my mind was racing with worst-case scenarios. I was trying to prepare myself for what was about to happen, but I had no idea what to expect. The rustling sound stopped right outside my room, and I could hear the sound of someone taking a deep breath. I closed my eyes, waiting for the worst. The door creaked open, and a sliver of light from the hallway illuminated the room. I opened my eyes to see Jack standing in the doorway, a look of determination on his face. "It's time," he said, his voice low and menacing. "It's time for you to give me what's mine." I tried to speak, but my voice was caught in my throat. I was unable to say a word, unable to move or react in any way. Jack took a step forward, his eyes fixed on me. I could see the anger and hatred in his eyes, and I knew that I was in grave danger. He reached out a hand, and I flinched, expecting him to grab me or hit me. But instead, he just pulled out a small piece of paper from his pocket and handed it to me. I took the paper, my hands shaking with fear. It was a note, written in Jack's handwriting. "You have 1 hour," the note said. 1 hour to give me the money. If you don't, I'll make sure you regret it." I looked up at Jack, trying to appeal to whatever humanity was left in him. But his eyes were cold and hard, and I knew that I was wasting my time. He turned and walked away, leaving me alone in the room. I sat there, staring at the note in my hand, trying to think of what to do. I knew that I couldn't give him the money, not now, not ever. But I also knew that I couldn't just sit here and do nothing. I had to come up with a plan to get out of this situation alive. I looked around the room, trying to think of anything that could help me. But there was nothing, just the same old furniture and decorations that had been here for years. I was trapped in a room with no way out. And Jack was waiting for me to make a move. I knew that I had to think fast, had to come up with a plan before it was too late. But my mind was a jumble of emotions and thoughts, and I couldn't think straight. I was stuck in a cycle of fear and anxiety. And I didn't know how to break free. As the minutes ticked by, I could feel the tension building. I knew that Jack was waiting for me to make a move. And I knew that I couldn't just sit here and do nothing. I had to act, had to do something to get out of this situation. But what could I do? I was trapped in a room with no way out. And Jack was waiting for me waiting for me to make a move. I looked around the room again, trying to think of anything that could help me. And then, I saw it. A small window, high up on the wall. It was my only chance, my only way out. I knew that I had to act fast, had to get out of the room before Jack came back. I stood up, my heart pounding in my chest. I was going to make a run for it, going to try and escape through the window. I knew that it was a risk, knew that I could get hurt. But I also knew that I had no other choice. I was trapped in a room with no way out. And Jack was waiting for me to make a move. I took a deep breath, trying to steel myself for what was to come. And then, I made a run for the window. I sprinted across the room, my heart pounding in my chest. I could hear the sound of my own breathing, and the creaking of the old wooden floorboards beneath my feet. I reached the window and grabbed the handle, pulling it open with a loud creak. The cool night air rushed in, and I felt a sense of relief wash over me. I hoisted myself up onto the windowsill, my legs trembling with fear. I looked out into the darkness, trying to get my bearings. The ground was far below me, and I could see the faint outline of the garden fence in the distance. I knew that I had to be careful, had to make sure that I didn't hurt myself. I took a deep breath and swung my legs over the side of the window, feeling the rush of adrenaline as I dropped down to the ground. I landed with a thud, my knees buckling beneath me. I scrambled to my feet, my heart racing with fear. I knew that I had to get out of there, had to get as far away from Jack as possible. I started to run, my feet pounding the earth as I sprinted across the garden. I could hear the sound of Jack's voice behind me, shouting and cursing as he realized what I had done. I didn't dare look back, didn't dare take the time to see if he was following me. I just kept running, my heart pounding in my chest. I reached the garden fence and scrambled over it, feeling the rough wood scraping against my skin. I landed on the other side, my knees buckling beneath me. I stumbled to my feet, my heart racing with fear. I knew that I had to keep moving, had to get as far away from Jack as possible. I started to run again, my feet pounding the earth as I sprinted down the street. I could hear the sound of Jack's voice behind me, shouting and cursing as he gave chase. I didn't dare look back, didn't dare take the time to see if he was following me. I just kept running, my heart pounding in my chest. I ran for what felt like hours, my legs aching and my lungs burning. I finally reached the safety of a nearby park, and collapsed onto a bench, gasping for breath. I looked around, trying to get my bearings. The park was quiet and deserted, the only sound the distant hum of traffic. I knew that I had to be careful, had to make sure that Jack didn't find me. I pulled out my phone and dialed a number, my hands shaking with fear. "Hello?" a voice answered. "It's me," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I need your help. Jack's after me. He's trying to hurt me." There was a pause on the other end of the line, and then the voice spoke up again. "Where are you?" it asked. "I'm in the park," I replied. "I'll come and get you," the voice said. "Just stay there and stay safe." I nodded, even though I knew that the person on the other end of the line couldn't see me. I hung up the phone and sat back on the bench, trying to calm down. I knew that I was safe for the moment, but I also knew that Jack was still out there, still trying to hurt me. I had to be careful, had to make sure that I didn't let my guard down. I looked around the park, trying to see if anyone was watching me. But the park was quiet and deserted, the only sound the distant hum of traffic. I sat back and waited, my heart still racing with fear. I knew that I had to be patient, had to wait for the person on the other end of the line to come and get me. But as I sat there, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I looked around again, trying to see if anyone was hiding in the shadows. And then, I saw him. Jack was standing on the other side of the park, his eyes fixed on me. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. He had found me. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. Jack was standing on the other side of the park, his eyes fixed on me. I could see the anger and hatred in his eyes, and I knew that I was in grave danger. I tried to stand up, but my legs were shaking and I couldn't move. I was paralyzed with fear, unable to do anything but sit there and stare at Jack. He took a step closer, his eyes never leaving mine. I could see the determination in his eyes, and I knew that he was going to come after me. I tried to scream, but my voice was caught in my throat. I was unable to make a sound, unable to do anything but sit there and wait for Jack to reach me. He took another step closer, his eyes burning with anger. I could see the veins bulging in his neck, and I knew that he was on the verge of losing control. I tried to move, but my body was frozen with fear. I was trapped, unable to do anything but sit there and wait for Jack to reach me. He took another step closer, his eyes fixed on mine. I could see the hatred and anger in his eyes, and I knew that I was in grave danger. I tried to close my eyes, but I couldn't. I was forced to watch as Jack approached me, his eyes burning with anger. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, and I knew that I was running out of time. I tried to think of something, anything, that I could do to escape. But my mind was a blank, and I was unable to think of anything. I was trapped, unable to do anything but sit there and wait for Jack to reach me. He took another step closer, his eyes fixed on mine. I could see the determination in his eyes, and I knew that he was going to come after me. I tried to move, but my body was frozen with fear. I was unable to do anything but sit there and wait for Jack to reach me. And then, just as Jack was about to reach me, a car pulled up beside us. The door opened, and a figure got out. It was the person I had called for help, and I felt a surge of relief wash over me. Jack stopped in his tracks, his eyes fixed on the newcomer. I could see the anger and hatred in his eyes, and I knew that he was not going to give up easily. The newcomer approached us, their eyes fixed on Jack. I could see the determination in their eyes, and I knew that they were not going to let Jack hurt me. "Leave him alone," the newcomer said, their voice firm and commanding. Jack snarled, his eyes flashing with anger. But the newcomer stood their ground, their eyes never leaving Jack's. I could see the tension between them, and I knew that things were about to get out of hand. And then, just as it seemed like things were going to escalate, Jack turned and ran. He disappeared into the night, leaving me shaken and scared. The newcomer turned to me, their eyes filled with concern. "Are you okay?" they asked. I nodded, still trying to process what had just happened. "Yes," I said, my voice shaking. "I'm okay." The newcomer helped me to my feet, and we walked back to the car. I was safe, at least for the moment. But I knew that Jack was still out there, and I knew that he would not give up easily. I was trapped in a living nightmare, and I didn't know how to escape. As we drove away from the park, I couldn't shake the feeling of relief that washed over me. I was finally safe, at least for the moment. But I knew that Jack was still out there, and I knew that he would not give up easily. The newcomer, who I later found out was a detective, took me to a safe house where I could stay until Jack was caught. I was grateful for their help, and I knew that I could trust them. As I settled into the safe house, I couldn't help but think about the past few days. I had been living in fear, always looking over my shoulder, waiting for Jack to strike. But now, I was finally safe. The detective came to visit me every day, keeping me updated on the progress of the case. They had found Jack's car, abandoned on the side of the road, but they still hadn't found him. I knew that it was only a matter of time before Jack was caught. And when he was, I knew that I would finally be able to put the past behind me and move on with my life. Days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into months. I had almost given up hope of ever finding closure. But then, one day, the detective came to visit me with a smile on their face. "We found him," they said, their voice filled with excitement. "We finally found Jack." I felt a rush of emotions, a mix of relief, anger, and sadness. I had been waiting for this moment for so long, and now that it was finally here, I didn't know how to process it. The detective told me that Jack had been caught trying to leave the country. He had been living in hiding, using fake identities and disguises to evade the police. But now, he was finally behind bars. And I was finally free. I went to the trial, watching as Jack was sentenced to life in prison. I felt a sense of closure, a sense of justice. As I walked out of the courtroom, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. I had finally found closure, finally found justice. I knew that I would never forget the past few months, but I also knew that I could finally move on with my life. I could finally put the past behind me and start anew. I thought about all the people who had helped me, all the people who had stood by me. I thought about the detective, who had worked tirelessly to bring Jack to justice. And I thought about myself, about how strong I had been. I had faced my fears, and I had come out on top. I knew that I would always carry the scars of the past few months with me. But I also knew that I was stronger because of it. I had been to hell and back, but I had made it out alive. And I knew that I would never let anyone or anything ever hurt me again. As I walked out of the courtroom, I felt a sense of hope. I knew that the future was bright, and I knew that I would always be okay. I took a deep breath, feeling the cool air fill my lungs. I was finally free, finally safe. And I knew that I would always be grateful for that.